Good evening, students. Welcome back. Hope you're doing well and I'm audible. Now, in our previous lectures, we had talked about all the aspects of Gupta rule, and today we need to talk about the decline of the Gupta Empire. Now, when did the decline of the Gupta Empire begin? Following the reign of Skandgupta, who died in 467 CE. He was followed by a long list of weak rulers. The last of which was Buddhagupta, who died in 550 CE. And with his death, the Gupta dynasty came to an end. Right? Now, what were the factors which contributed to the decline of this great empire? क्या थे ये? First of all, the beginning of Huna invasions, who not only disrupted overseas trade, thus depriving the Guptas of a major source of revenue, but also by contributing to the major increase in their military expenditure and militarization of the polity, resulting in the emergence of feudalism. Second were institutional factors such as the feudalization of the polity, the absence of a fixed rule of succession, and the growing decentralization of the state. The third was the emergence of or the proliferation of land grants, which became the medium through which the state was overseeing its own dissolution. Along with the land grants, not only wealth was being transferred to the feudal lords, but apart from that, sovereign powers and legitimacy were also being transferred. So it was as if the Gupta rulers were overseeing the dissolution of their own authority. And these have been identified as the chief factors responsible for the decline of the Gupta Empire. लिख लेते हैं इसको जल्दी से. Write down. The disintegration of the Gupta Empire began after the death of Skandgupta. Full stop. The Guptas were never able to recover from this gradual slide and by the mid 6th century, the dynasty of the imperial Guptas had disappeared entirely, leaving behind a deeply fractured polity in which multiple states competed against each other for supremacy. For supremacy. Full stop. Next main point. Therefore, the disintegration of the Gupta Empire played an important role in facilitating further historical change. In facilitating further historical change. And thus, it becomes important to understand the factors behind this decline. The factors behind this decline. Likho. Next point. The Gupta Empire declined due to a combination of internal and external factors. Full stop. Chief among them are colon and dash in the form of subheadings. Number 1, Huna invasions. Write down. The Hunas were a group of warlike tribes. From Central Asia who began invading India in the mid 5th century CE. Who was the Gupta ruler at the time of the earliest Huna invasions of India? Kumar Gupta. Okay? Next point. Initially, their attacks were repelled by Prince Skandgupt. But the Guptas were unable to find a permanent solution to the recurring Huna invasions. So it was not as if they were given one good beating and they would never return. They continued to invade time after time in successive waves. It became an almost annual affair for the Hunas to invade Gupta territory. Next point, likho. One reason for this was the nature of Huna polity. Did their political system have a high degree of centralization? No. Hunas were tribals and not belonging to the same tribe. They were an ethnic group divided into various tribes. तो कई सारे tribes थे उनके, ठीक है? Even if one tribe was defeated, was there any guarantee that future invasion by other tribes would not take place? No such guarantee was there. So क्या लिखा आपने अभी? One reason for this was the nature of their polity. Write down. The Hunas were not unified under the centralized rule of a single ruler. Of a single ruler. Rather, full stop, rather, their polity was divided under various tribes and tribal chiefs. Various tribes and tribal chiefs. Subpoint. Therefore, even a major victory or a diplomatic arrangement with a major victory against or a diplomatic arrangement with one tribe of Hunas did not provide any guarantee against invasions by other Huna tribes. Guarantee against invasions by other Huna tribes. Full stop. Next main point लिखो. The successive waves of Huna invasions caused great damage to the Gupta Empire. In the following ways. Sub points 1 2 3 4 करके लिखो. Number 1, India's external trade along the Silk Road was disrupted, resulting in a huge loss of profits and revenue. Full stop. Next sub point number 2. The decline of external trade contributed to the process of deurbanization and demonetization. Next, number 3. The decline of the monetary system coupled with the rising military needs of the state contributed to the growth of what? A monetary system, supply of money is declining and military needs are increasing. what would that result in? The rise of military feudalism through land transfer to the important military officials. Contribute क्या लिखा आपने अभी? Contributed to the growth of military feudalism through land grants. Through land grants. To top military officials. To top military officials. So stop. Next sub point. Number 4. Number 4 लिखो. Further, the rising military expenditure. The rising military expenditure of the state also contributed to resource deprivation in other sectors. In other sectors, comma, resulting in administrative weakness as well as economic decline. So all of this military expenditure is done towards an unproductive activity, right? So no new demand is going to be created as a result, no new production is going to take place, and further it is also going to deprive the other subjects of administration from the necessary funds. It is also going to draw away many civilian officials towards the military as well. So administrative breakdown and economic breakdown is going to be accelerated as a result. Next sub point. Since fifth, since the Guptas progressively lost their ability, to provide effective governance, comma, centrifugal tendencies were able to overcome the centralizing efforts of the Gupta state, resulting in its disintegration. Full stop. Next sub point. As a result, while the earlier Huna invasions could have been repelled, comma, the Guptas lost more and more territory to the Hunas towards the end, thus accelerating their disintegration. ठीक है, next main point लिखो. Therefore, The repeated Huna invasions not only threatened, or sorry, not only destabilized the northwestern frontier, but also precipitated an internal breakdown of the Gupta imperial system. ठीक है? So this is one factor. कौन सा? Repeated Huna invasions. Number 2, institutional factors. Second subheading, institutional factors. लिखो. The Guptas had adopted the practice of restoring defeated kings and entrusting administration to feudal lords in the peripheral zones. Full stop. How were these defeated rulers and feudal lords kept under control? Both through persuasion as well as coercion. So there was always threat of military action against rebels, and a kind of an arrangement, a deal was made, a give and take relationship was also established between the Gupta ruler and these feudatories and defeated rulers. Next point, write down, or sub point you can write. These elements were kept under control. Through both coercive and conciliatory means. Coercive, COERCIVE. Coercive, coercion, मतलब किसी भी चीज को फोर्स करना. Coercive and conciliatory means. But natural tendency इन लोगों का क्या होगा? To continue remaining under Gupta rule or to gain more autonomy? Gain more and more autonomy, more and more power. Next main point लिखो. However, these elements represented potential political rivals who emerged as a perpetual threat to centralized control. And when do you think they are going to act? When everything is stable or when there is prevailing chaos? When there is prevailing chaos, they would try to take advantage of the situation. Subpoint likho. They complicated political relations for the Guptas, especially during periods of political instability. By trying to reassert their autonomy. And therefore, as soon as political stability used to be restored, what was the first thing that the Gupta rulers had to do? They had to suppress them. Okay, for example, Samudragupta started his reign by overrunning the whole country. What was the need? After the death of his father, all his feudatories had risen up in rebellion. He had to suppress all those rebellions. Next point likho. Thus, almost all Gupta rulers had to contend with a series of rebellions, a series of rebellions quite frequently. Best way to overcome rebellion? By crushing them with the help of a strong military. लेकिन उसके लिए चाहिए क्या होगा? Strong military, which would require a high degree of military expenditure. तो पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है? From the people, from the feudal lords, as well as from the other sectors of the market and administration. So some things would have to be deprived in order to sustain a high level of military expenditure. Next main point likho. To overcome this political instability, political uncertainty, comma, the Gupta rulers had to maintain a high degree of military readiness. At all times. Full stop. Therefore, with the passage of time, comma, the Gupta state could not reduce its dependence on the military. In fact, as the empire grew in size, क्या होगा? The size of its military as well as its military need, that is also going to increase, expand. क्या लिखा आपने? Grew in size, its military dependence as well as the size of the military increased or expanded. Expanded would be a better word. Size of its military expanded. And result क्या होगा? वही जो हमने हुना इन्वेजन के एंड में देखा था. क्या? Administrative breakdown and rise of feudalism. Sub point लिखो. This contributed to the breakdown of administration. And the rise of feudalism. Clear? So one institutional factor was the nature of the Gupta state. Kya? From the very beginning, the king relied upon defeated rulers and loyal feudatories to rule in his stead. However, this was unsustainable, ultimately contributing to the decline of the empire. Second institutional factor, the absence of a fixed rule of सक्सेशन। ठीक है, आगे लिखो। नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट, नंबर 3 नहीं है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट, another important institutional factor was the absence of a fixed rule of succession. A fixed rule of succession. What happened due to this? क्या होगा? War of succession होगा, court intrigue होगा, both of which are going to weaken the empire from within. How? The court is going to split, अलग अलग मान लो 4-5 contenders हैं, the court is going to split into 4 or 5 groups, right? And they are all going to support their own candidates. One of them is going to emerge victorious. He would now have to share power with his own noble patrons. Therefore, he would have to dilute his own authority and acquiesce to the demands of his core support group, because if he loses their support, he will be in danger of losing the throne, क्योंकि उसके enemies अभी भी कोर्ट में बचे हुए हैं. ठीक है, that is one way. Secondly, war of succession, इसका नुकसान क्या होगा? इससे फायदा होता है कुछ? Does the state get any more land, any more revenue, any more workers, any more taxpayers? कुछ नहीं होता है. It simply results in the one-sided destruction of resources. So thus it impoverishes the entire state, and it takes a very long period to recover from such a development. इसकी भरपाई करने के लिए क्या क्या जरूरी होगा? Expansion, but even that was not possible in the later phase of the Gupta age. So as the state started, or the state stagnated, the continuation of these wars of succession, they extracted a heavy toll upon the state's resources, and this was happening at a time when the military bill of the state was already increasing because of Pune invasions and other institutional factors. Okay? So as a result, there was a grave economic crisis that could be experienced by the Gupta state. हमको पता कैसे लगता है? Debasement of currency. It had started during the reign of Kumar Gupta himself, but during the reign of the later Gupta rulers, it increased. So the rising impurity of coins indicates that from the mid 5th century onwards, the Gupta Empire was experiencing a sharp economic crisis. Maybe one of the reasons was this also. If this was not the only factor, it was a major contributing factor. Write down. क्या लिखा आपने लास्ट लाइन? Absence of fixed rule of succession. लिखो. Factionalism and intrigue. Factionalism and intrigue became commonplace at the imperial court. Became commonplace at the imperial court. Commonplace मतलब आम बात हो गया. Became commonplace at the imperial court as different contenders laid their claims to the throne. Laid their claims to the throne and sought SOUGHT, and sought powerful allies within the court. Allies within the court. तो हुआ क्या? Court, instead of remaining under the sole control of the king, became divided into different parties. जैसे पार्लियामेंट में अलग अलग पार्टीज होती हैं, वैसे ही कोर्ट में भी अलग अलग पार्टीज इमर्ज हो जाएंगी. अब नेक्स्ट सब पॉइंट, और सब पॉइंट लिखो इसके अंदर. Successful candidates had to necessarily share power with their supporters, or else they may become isolated. They may become isolated. ठीक है? Therefore, the centralized authority of the king was parceled out among his chief allies, right? And which kind of tendency is this going to promote? The tendency of decentralization and feudalism. Next main point likho. Further, the absence of a fixed rule of succession contributed to frequent wars, but unlike wars of conquest, wars of succession did not result in the acquisition of territory, land, taxpayers, or resources. To stop. Subpoint. Rather, they caused the wanton destruction. WANTON. Wanton destruction of resources at a time when the Gupta Empire was already facing a severe resource crunch. Full stop. Next subpoint. In fact, wars of succession may have played a direct role in facilitating the growth of feudalism, and decentralization. ठीक है? एंड ये हो गए इंस्टीट्यूशनल फैक्टर्स. नाउ सब हेडिंग नंबर 3, लैंड ग्रांट्स. देखो, the Guptas began transferring more and more land to priests and military officials in the form of hereditary land grants. land grants. Full stop. Subpoint. Along with land ownership, comma, the donees, the grantees would be a better word. The grantees also enjoyed special rights and privileges. Special rights and privileges, including the right to enforce law over the subjects living and working on their land, comma, the right to levy and collect taxes from them, comma, the responsibility of defending them, which would require what? The raising of an army and construction of fortifications. Yeah, the responsibility of defending them, which required the raising of troops, and construction of forts, comma, the right to extract forced labor from them, and to administer justice, ठीक है. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. if we observe closely, comma, it becomes clear that the Guptas were essentially equipping the recipients of these land grants with all the ingredients to establish an autonomous and independent state. What are the ingredients of any state? Population, territory, treasury, and power. So through these land grants, they were giving them their own population base, which could pay taxes, so treasury bhi, through which they could raise an army. They had power also, and a territory to defend and rule over also. Further, the sovereign rights of revenue collection, administration of justice, enforcement of law, defense, etc., they were also legally being transferred over to the recipients of these land grants. Next main point. Therefore, through these land grants, comma, the Guptas were essentially overseeing, sorry, were essentially overseeing their own dissolution by encouraging sub-state formation within their own empire. Sub-state formation within their own empire. Okay? So these are the factors responsible for the decline of the Gupta Empire. Take down a question. The disintegration of the Gupta Empire was as much a result of internal factors as external ones. Full stop. Discuss. What do we have to talk about over here? What is the demand of the question? जो हमने अभी डिस्कस किया है वही सब लिखना है इसमें? नहीं, दैट इज नॉट द मेन डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन. क्वेश्चन में आपको ये असेस करना है that whether in the decline of the Gupta Empire, internal and external factors played an equally important role or not. ठीक है? तो if, for example, internal factors were not there, that we have discussed, institutional factors, land grants, were external factors sufficient enough, powerful enough to have caused the decline of the Gupta Empire? ये आपको डिटरमिन करना है. Or conversely, if external factors were not present, Pune invasions were not happening, were the internal factors that were ailing the Gupta Empire powerful enough to have destroyed it, to have led to its disintegration or not? Or could the Gupta Empire have persisted? Could it have sustained and recovered? Was that possible or not? This is what you have to see over here. तो क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा हमको? Internal factors ज्यादा harmful थे. So that is the argument that you have to make over here. और कैसे करोगे? Essentially, you have to make the argument that internal factors were the main driving force behind the disintegration of the Gupta Empire. और ये जो external factors हैं, they simply played the role of a catalyst and accelerant. ठीक है? तो फ्यूल यहां से आ रहा है, यहां पे केवल कैटलिस्ट है. Clear? Another thing that you have to emphasize upon, that external factors alone would not have caused the decline of the Gupta Empire if it was internally strong. And even though external factors had not existed, suppose the Hunas had never invaded, sooner or later, due to the prevailing internal factors, the Gupta Empire would have definitely disintegrated. So it was these internal factors which made the decline of the Gupta Empire inevitable. ठीक है? We cannot make the same case for the Huna invasions, that is the external factors. In fact, because the internal factors were not in operation during the initial stages, or the impact of the internal factors was less pronounced in the early stages of the Gupta Empire, that is why it was able to sustain itself for more than 1 century even after the beginning of Huna invasions. It is during the later half of the Gupta age when the full weight of the internal factors was being felt by the Gupta Empire that it collapsed due to the external factors, that is the Huna invasions. ठीक है? So this is the argument that you have to make over here. अभी समझ में आया क्या करना है? केवल सिंपल ये बताना नहीं होगा कि फैक्टर्स क्या क्या थे, इंटरनल और एक्सटर्नल दोनों काम कर रहे हैं. यही बताना होगा कि उसमें ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट रोल किसने प्ले किया, दैट इज द इंटरनल फैक्टर्स नॉट द एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स. राइट. तो ये हो गया द गुप्ता एम्पायर. नाउ वी कम टू द पोस्ट गुप्ता एज. बात किसके बारे में करनी है हमें? 3 थिंग्स. हर्षवर्धन, चालुक्यास एंड पल्लवास. टाइम पीरियड है अराउंड 600 to 750 CE. First of all, about Harshvardhan. Now, what happened with the disintegration of the Gupta Empire? What was the political scenario in North India like following the decline of the Gupta Empire? क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है हमें? That right? थोड़ा inaccurate हो गया है, but काम चल जाएगा इससे. Now, In the region of Magad and Malwa emerged a new group of rulers who claimed to be descendants of the imperial Guptas, but we are not sure about their heritage. They are known as the later Guptas. Okay? While they retained their control over the region of Magad and Malwa, they had lost all their other regions where different principalities had emerged. For example, in the region of Bengal and parts of Odisha, a powerful kingdom had emerged known as God. In the region of Gujarat, the Maitrika dynasty had established its control. In the region of modern day Uttar Pradesh, a powerful kingdom had emerged under the Maukri dynasty. And further to the west, in the region of Haryana and parts of Punjab, a smaller power under the Pushyabhuti dynasty had emerged with its capital at Thaneshwar in Haryana, right? Presently known as Thanesar. This was the political scenario in North India following the Gupta decline. And after every imperial phase, what is going to happen? A period of political fragmentation. What is the nature of the relationship between these states going to be like? They are going to be in constant competition against each other in search of political supremacy. They want to establish their sole control over this entire region. And in this power struggle, the most powerful kingdom was that of the Maukris. So, what kind of a relationship would the Pushyabhuti seek with the Maukris? A hostile relation or a friendly relation? Friendly relation, right? Therefore, a matrimonial alliance emerged between the two of them. The ruler of the Maukri kingdom was an individual named Grihavarman. He was approached by the ruler of the Pushyabhuti kingdom or the Vardhan kingdom. His name was Prabhakar Vardhan, and he had one of his daughters whose name was Rajashri married to Grihavarman. Okay? Clear? Now, this alliance threatened the other powers who was at the southern border or the eastern border of the Maukris. The later Guptas, their ruler was an individual called देवगुप्त. ठीक है. And Devgupt, feeling threatened by this Maukri Pushyabhuti alliance, entered into his own alliance with the ruler of God, whose name was Shashank. Right? Now, war between the west and the east seemed imminent. kabhi bhi ho sakta tha. The eastern powers, the later Guptas and God, they took the initiative and attacked the Mokri kingdom by surprise. What was the result? Grihavarman was killed in battle. Prabhakar Vardhan died of shock when he heard the news, and his son Rajyavardhan now came to the throne and marched towards Kannauj, the kingdom of the Mokris, in order to rescue his sister Rajyashri. He was successful in doing so as well. Devgupta was defeated. However, he himself was killed by treachery by the king of God, that is Shashank. So he was also no longer in the scene. क्लियर है? अब कौन इमर्ज होगा? The hero of the story, that is Harshavardhan, who was only 16 years of age and did not want the crown. But pushed by duty, he was forced to accept the crown at Thaneshwar. Then he also united the kingdom of the Mokris with his own kingdom. This became a unified kingdom, the kingdom of Harshvardhan. Next order of business would be to drive Shashank and his allies out of Kannauj. He was able to do this successfully as well. इसके बाद क्या करेगा? He is going to act against his enemies also. So he is now going to start seeking his own allies. Right? इसको ally कहां पे मिलेगा? In this region. क्या है ये? कामरूप, or a home kingdom. Capital is Kamrup. Its ruler Bhaskar Varman. Now he, in alliance with Bhaskar Varman, is going to defeat both Shashank and Devgupta. And following this, he is going to consolidate his power over the whole of North India. And then he is going to enter into an alliance with the Maitrikas. Its ruler was Dhruv Bhatta II, right? And in alliance with Dhruv Bhatta, after having consolidated his control over the whole of North India, he would try to cross the Vindhyas and invade the Deccan region. किससे लड़ाई होगी इसकी? Pulkesin II of the Chalukya dynasty. The result of that battle, he would lose. He would be forced to retreat, and in the Deccan region he would fail. ठीक है? So ये political scenario है, and this is the process of the rise of Harshvardhan to power. Write down. Give the heading Harshvardhan, and उसके अंदर लिखो background. Background and early rise. Background and early rise. लिखो. With the decline of the Gupta Empire, the political situation in North India the political situation in North India disintegrated. And a large number of regional powers emerged. And a large number of regional powers emerged. Full stop. They included A B C D करके लिख सकते हो. A, the later Guptas under Devgupt, who ruled over Magad and parts of eastern Malwa. God, B, God, that is undivided Bengal, ruled by Shashank. Next, C, the Maitrikas, who ruled Gujarat under Dhruv Bhatta. D, the Mokhris of Kannauj under Grihavarman. Next, E, the Pushyabhutis or Vardhans of Thaneshwar under Prabhakar Vardhan. And the Ahom kingdom under Bhaskar Varman. F, Ahom kingdom under Bhaskar Varman. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट. एक बार दिखाना क्या लिखा है आपने. हाँ, next main point. These powers were competing against each other to establish political supremacy. Full stop. Next point. A matrimonial alliance between the Pushyabhutis and Mokhris emerged as Prabhakar Vardhan of Thaneshwar married his daughter Rajyashri to Grihavarman of Kannauj. ठीक है. Next main point. In response, Devgupt of Malwa formed an alliance with Shashank of God and attacked Kannauj. Resulting in the death of Grihavarman. Full stop. Next point. Rajyavardhan, the Crown Prince of Thaneshwar, tried to rescue his sister, but was treacherously assassinated by Shashank. Full stop. Subpoint. Upon hearing this, Prabhakar Vardhan died of shock. Next main point. It was in this scenario, died of shock. Next main point. It was in this scenario that the rule of Thaneshwar became the responsibility of Harshavardhan, who was only 16 years of age. Full stop. Next main point. Harshavardhan made an alliance with Bhaskar Varman of Kamrup. To push Shashank out of Kannauj. Full stop. Following this, he unified the thrones of the Pushyabhutis and the Mokris. With Kannauj as his capital. with Kannauj as his capital. With Kannauj as his capital. Full stop. Subpoint. Next, he united the whole of North India through a major military campaign. Through a major military campaign. Next, he united the whole of North India through a major military campaign. What are the important sources of information about Harshvardhan? A large number of literary as well as archaeological evidence. Archaeological sources include his coins and inscriptions, such as the Madhuban copper plate inscription, the Sonepat inscription, the Baskheda inscription, the Nalanda inscription, etc. Among the literary sources, we are dependent upon the writings of three prominent authors: Banbhat, Huensang, and thirdly, Harshvardhan himself. बानभट्ट ने क्या क्या लिखा है? The Harshcharita, which is his biography of Harshvardhan, and the Kadambari, a Sanskrit play. Sorry, a Sanskrit novel. ठीक है? Whereas Harshvardhan ने क्या क्या लिखा है? 3 Sanskrit plays. Ratnavali, Naganand, and Priyadarshikas. These are all Sanskrit plays. Priyadarshika, Ratnavali, Naganand, and Priyadarshika. Huensang has written an account of his travels in his native Mandarin language. He has called it Siyuki. That is an account of eastern lands. Now, apart from this, Harsha, since he was also a prominent figure within Buddhism, there is also a high also a large number of Buddhist texts who make references to him, but these are the most important sources about him. Now, one question can come with regards to the extent of Harsha's empire. Okay. Now, according to Huensang, Harsha established his mastery over the whole of North India by the time he was 22 years of age. Okay. So, this conquest of the whole of North India was carried out only in a period of 6 years, between 606 and 612. In fact, according to Huensang, he was the king of the 5 Indies. That is 5 major regions of North India. That is Saraswat, Kannauj, Magad, God, and Kaling. Saraswat was the ancient name of Punjab. Kannauj to UP वाला region. Magad, Bihar. God, Bengal, and Kalinga, Odisha. Okay. However, this is a matter of debate as to whether the account of Huensang is believable or not. And there are some historians who challenge the claims made by Huensang. Write down. According to Huensang, comma, Harshavardhan was the master of the whole of North India. Was the master of the whole of North India. Full stop. He claims that Harsha had completed his conquest of the north at the age of 22. Full stop. It had taken him only 6 years to do so. It had taken him only 6 years to do so. Within brackets 606 to 612. Full stop. Subpoint. As a result, comma, Huensang goes on to describe Harsha as the king of the 5 Indies. As the king of the 5 Indies. Clear है ना? Next main point लिखो. However, However, Huan Sang's account must be taken with a pinch of salt. Must be taken with a pinch of salt. Subpoint. Harsha's chief rival, who was he? Who had murdered his brother, kidnapped his sister? God, Shashank. Harsha's chief rival, Shashank, continued to rule over Bengal until 637 CE. Until 637 CE. What does this mean? He had not been able to eliminate Shashank, nor had he been able to conquer Gaur. Okay? Continued to rule till 637 CE, as proven by the discovery of coins and inscriptions of Shashank that can be conclusively dated to this date. Conclusively dated to this date. Coins and inscriptions of Shashank that can be conclusively dated to this date. ठीक है? Next सब point लिखो. In fact, it was only after Shashank's death. That Harsha, in alliance with Bhaskar Varman, of Kamrup, established control over West Bengal and Ganjam, that is North Odisha. West Bengal and Ganjam. So not even the whole of God he got, right? The remainder territory of God was taken by Bhaskar Varman. So they divided the kingdom between them. Next main point likho. According to Huan Sang, the ruler of Kashmir also accepted Harsha's overlordship. Full stop. However, this also seems doubtful, as there is no mention of Harsha either in the contemporary Kashmiri inscriptions or in which famous Kashmiri work on history, the first one ever in India, the Raj Tarangini of Kalhana, or in the Raj Tarangini of Kalhana. So if Kalhana can mention distant kings such as Ashok and Kanishk, how could he forget Harshavardhan? If Harshvardhan had had an impact on Kashmir's history, he would have definitely been mentioned. Next main point likho. Huensang further claims that while Harshvardhan initially had good relations with the Maitrikas of Gujarat, a conflict emerged over the issue of control of Malwa. Over the issue of the control of Malwa. What happened in this conflict? According to Huensang, Harsha emerged victorious, and the ruler of the Maitrikas, his capital was Vallabhi, he accepted Harsha's overlordship. Full stop. According to Huensang, Dhruv Bhatta accepted Harsha's overlordship. But Ban Bhatt gives us some contradictory information in the Harshcharita. Write down. On the other hand, Ban Bhatt does not mention any conflict. Rather, he mentions that the two rulers had established matrimonial relations. Okay? So if there is no conflict, there is no question of overlordship. Next main point. Huensang also claims that Harsha's territory even covered Nepal. Full stop. Subpoint. Some inscriptions from Nepal mention a local calendar known as the Harsh Samvat. But most historians are of the opinion that what? ये वाला हर्ष अपना वाला हर्ष है, दूसरा कोई है. But most historians are of the opinion that they refer to a different local ruler. Rather than Harshvardhan of Kannauj. ठीक है? Next point. Further, in a period when feudalism was rising, Would it be realistic to assume that Nepal was under Harsha's rule, direct rule? No. It would be unrealistic. It would be unrealistic to consider the possibility of Nepal being under Harsha's direct control. Being under Harsha's direct control. ठीक है? Next main point. Based on the claims of Huensang, based on the claims of Huensang, comma, K.M. Panikkar opined that Harsha's empire in North India stretched from Sindh and Rajasthan in the west to Assam in the east, and from Kashmir in the north to the Vindhyas in the south. Full stop. Next sub point, और सॉरी नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट. समझ में आया है क्या बोल रहे हैं? नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. However, Dr. R.C. Majumdar has strongly challenged this opinion and emphasized that Harsha's empire stretched at most from eastern Punjab in the west to West Bengal and northern Odisha in the west to West Bengal and northern Odisha in the east. Full stop. Sub point. It did not include Kashmir, Western Punjab, Rajasthan, Sindh, Nepal और Assam. ठीक है? Next sub point. At the same time, comma, it is plausible that the rulers of these regions recognized Harsha's power. But were not completely subordinated to them. ठीक है, ये हो गया है a discussion on the extent of Harsha's empire. Take down a question. On the basis of literary and archaeological sources, shed light on the debate surrounding the extent of Harshvardhan's empire. Question समझ में आया है? You do not need to talk about the extent of Harsha's empire. You need to talk about the debate surrounding the extent of Harsha's empire. तो यहाँ पे आपको क्या बोलना पड़ेगा? That एक तरफ है केएम पानिक्कर और दूसरी तरफ है आरसी Majumdar. केएम पानिक्कर conducted his study on the basis of Huensang's description exclusively. Whereas R.C. Majumdar based his analysis of the extent of Harsha's empire on the basis of not only Huensang but also the contemporary other literary sources such as the Harshacharita and inscriptions, not only those belonging to Harshvardhan but also those belonging to his neighbors such as Kashmir or Shashank or Bhaskar Varman or Dhruv Bhatta, etc. And on the basis of the extent of Harsha's coinage also. And as a result, there is bound to be a difference between the territorial map of Harsha's empire constructed by R.C. Majumdar and K.M. Panikkar. In the end, क्या बोलोगे आप? Are you going to assign the same validity to both, or one of those are going to be more valid? R.C. Majumdar वाला ज़्यादा valid क्यों? Because it is not reliant exclusively upon a single source, rather कई sources हैं, critically इन्होंने उनको analyze किया हुआ है and comparison भी किया हुआ है. Critical mind has been applied with the analysis of inscriptions and coins in order to eliminate various possibilities. So this is what you have to talk about. So while talking about R.C. Majumdar's approach, you will be talking about the literary and archaeological sources. तो करना ये है आपको, लेकिन नेसेसरी ये नहीं है कि फ्रेमवर्क आपके आंसर का यही होना चाहिए, वो बदल भी सकता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हाउ कैन यू बिगिन? that questions with regards to the greatness of Harsha have been part of Indian historical studies since the very beginning. One aspect of these studies, of this debate, is with regards to the exact dimensions of Harsha's empire, and different historical opinions exist. On the basis of Huan Sang's description of his empire, K.M. Panikkar has tried to create a picture of his empire. यहाँ पे आपको मैप भी बनाना चाहिए जिसमें जो पोर्शंस हर्षा के कंट्रोल में है उनको शेड कर देना चाहिए. तो इंडिया का पंजाब, पाकिस्तान का पंजाब, वो पूरा पूरा का पूरा सिंध, पूरा राजस्थान, पूरा गुजरात, पूरा कश्मीर, पूरा नेपाल एंड बंगाल और ओडिशा along with the whole of Assam, all these things should be shaded. ऑन द अदर हैंड आरसी मजूमदार ने क्या बोला है, ये सोर्सेस के बेसिस पर कुछ रीजन्स को उन्होंने एलिमिनेट किया हुआ है. ये हैज सीरियसली चैलेंज केएम पनिक्कर्स एनालिसिस. यहाँ पे भी एक दूसरा मैप होना चाहिए, राइट. एंड देन उसके बाद थर्ड पोर्शन में क्या करना होगा आपको, कंक्लूजन पोर्शन में you will have to show why RC Majumdar's analysis with regards to this debate is more valid. क्यों? क्योंकि he has not relied on a single source, rather he has eliminated various territorial possibilities on the basis of other sources, as well as keeping in mind the nature of political relationships and the nature of Harsha's administration at that stage. ठीक है, तो वो आपको यहाँ पे बताना होगा. क्लियर? राइट, तो ये हो गया द डिबेट विद रिगार्ड्स टू हर्षाज एम्पायर. एक और डिबेट है, वेदर और नॉट हर्षवर्धन was the last great Hindu ruler or Hindu empire builder. Of India or not. तो जो अर्ली कॉलोनियल हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंडिया थी उसमें देयर वाज अ वेरी पॉपुलर सेंटिमेंट दैट with the death of Harshvardhan ended the era of India's last great Hindu empire builder. So following this, Hindu rule in North India or in India as a whole experienced general decline, and this was a major development which resulted in the advent of Islamic rule in Indian historiography. तो इस तरह की हिस्ट्री कौन लिख रहे होंगे? Indian historians, nationalists, or colonial historians? Colonial, and that to the early historians, the utilitarian historians who wanted to communalize Indian history. So James Mill, for example, J.S. Mill, for example, had done the tripartite division of Indian history into Hindu, Muslim, and British periods. तो उस पेडिग्री, उस कैटेगरी के जो हिस्टोरियंस थे, they are the ones who consider Harsha to be the last great Hindu empire builder. However, in the later decades and centuries, this opinion has come under attack. It has been largely discredited. देखते हैं किस बेसिस पे. Write down. The early colonial historiography of India, the early colonial historiography of India heavily romanticizes the figure of Harshvardhan. Full stop. His rule is considered to be the last days of Hindu greatness in India. following which there was a long period of decline. There was a long period of decline and weakness, which resulted in the advent of Islamic rule and India's Muslim age. And India's, which resulted in the advent of Islamic rule and India's Muslim age. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. This view of Harshvardhan has partly been informed by the writings of which scholars? Banbhat and Huensang. Full stop. The other factor behind this view was informed by the colonial interests when it came to Indian historiography. Namely, the communalization of Indian past. Full stop. Subpoint. Colonial historians claimed that ABC करके Harsha was the last great Hindu ruler. B, after him, political unity never emerged in North India till the emergence of the Delhi Sultanate. ठीक है? So this is one point of view. Next main point लिखो. Later historians, beginning with R.C. Majumdar R.C. Majumdar have completely discarded this view on several grounds. Number one, he questions the true extent of Harsha's greatness. Arguing that unlike Samudragupta, Harsha never successfully invaded the Deccan. है कि नहीं? So was he actually so great? We don't know. Next sub point. Unlike Ashok, he did not introduce any grand philosophy like Dhamma. Next sub point. Harsha was also unable to correct the downward trend in polity, economy and society. Next sub point. Finally, Harsha's empire also died with him. Full stop. It was not as long lived as the Gupta or Mauryan Empire. ठीक है? Next main point. R.C. Majumdar has also rejected the idea that Harsha was the last great empire builder of pre-Islamic India. Why? Because if we say this, then we would be ignoring the contributions of several other rulers and dynasties. Write down. Sub point. Doing this would mean overlooking the vast empires established by established by Yashovarman of Kannauj, Yashovarman of Kannauj, comma, Lalitaditya of Kashmir, comma, the Gurjar Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas and Palas, Rashtrakutas, Palas, the Gurjar Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, Palas, Pallavas, Chalukyas and Cholas. ठीक है. In fact, many of the empires established by these rulers and dynasties were much larger and richer than Harsha's empire. Next point likho. In fact, many of these empires were much larger, stronger and more prosperous than Harsha's empire. In fact, if we look at the Pallava and Chola empire, their empires were not limited only to India. Rather, they also stretched to Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Southeast Asia, etc. Seychelles even. ठीक है. Next main point लिखो. R.C. Majumdar has also questioned the logic of considering Harsha to be a Hindu ruler. Was he Hindu? He may have started life as a Hindu, but definitely did not end his life as a Hindu. He was a religious convert like Ashoka. Both of these figures are associated with Buddhism. Okay, so write down. Like subpoint, like Ashok, comma, Harshvardhan is famous for his devotion and patronage towards Buddhism. Now, we can make the argument over here, ठीक है कि ये हिंदू नहीं था, but he used to organize the Mahamoksh Parishad, where he used to perform religious charity for all religions, whether it is Hinduism or Buddhism or Jainism, anything, right? He even participated in sun worship, in the worship of Ganesh, in the worship of Shiva, etc., which were all associated with the previous members of his dynasty. His father, for example, was a Shaivite. His brother was a sun worshipper. During his early years, he was both a Shaivite and a sun worshipper. So he continued that tradition also. He also gave very generously to both Brahmins as well as Buddhist monks, right? So there was no discrimination. Many of his officials, they came from Brahmanical backgrounds, right? So this argument can be made over here. However, Huensang himself talks about the large assembly that he organized for promoting Mahayan Buddhism at Kannauj, right? Purpose क्या था उसका? Mahayan Buddhism को promote करना. Who was the president of that council? It was Huensang, another Buddhist, right? What happened during that council? It went on for 23 days, and Huensang writes that he was able to establish the supremacy of Mahayana Buddhism over all other religions and was thus able to establish it as the most dominant religion of India. Right? That is his claim. He also mentions that during the discussions and debates, some discussions became very heated and clashes broke out. One such clash became out of control, and the entire venue that was caught up in a major fire. Ultimately, 500 Brahmins out of the attendees, they were held to be uh, guilty. Many of them were executed at the orders of Harshvardhan. Many of them were exiled, and many of them were even fined. Okay? So what does this tell you? कि complete religious tolerance था या थोड़ा degree of intolerance भी था? Intolerance भी था, and intolerance in favor, sorry, against whom? Against Brahmins. तो इसको हिंदू रूलर कहने का लॉजिक फिट बैठेगा? नहीं बैठेगा. So that is the argument he is making. क्या लिखा आपने? Is famous for his devotion and patronage to Buddhism. Next sub point. While the argument may be made that Harshvardhan followed a tolerant religious policy, may be made that Harshvardhan followed a tolerant religious policy, comma, Huensang himself informs us of how Harshvardhan himself publicized the supremacy of Mahayana Buddhism but even occasionally persecuted religious opposers. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो. other than this, comma, Dr. Majumdar has questioned Harshvardhan's achievements, or sorry, Harshvardhan's credentials as an empire builder. Full stop. Sub point. Firstly, Harshvardhan relied upon the support of military allies to complete his conquest. Next point. Secondly, he did not even control the whole of North India. Next sub point. Thirdly, even within the areas which fell, even in the areas which fell within his territory, comma, was his rule absolute, comma, his rule does not appear to be absolute, as there was a strong element of feudalism within his empire, as indicated by the use of terms such as Samanta, Mahasamanta, Param Samanta, etc. क्या लिखा आपने? As indicated by the by Banbhat, ठीक है? So these terms have been used by Banbhat. And what are these terms for? Different categories of feudal lords, different ranks of feudal lords. सबसे ऊपर वाला feudal lord परम सामंता, उसके नीचे वाला महासामंता, उसके नीचे वाला सामंता, right? So on the basis of this, would it be correct to say that Harshvardhan was India's last great Hindu empire builder? He was neither the last empire builder, nor was he so great, nor was he Hindu, and nor was he such a great empire builder. ठीक है? So हर aspect पे डॉक्टर मजूमदार ने इसको चैलेंज किया है. Write down. Next main point, conclusion. देखो. From this analysis, it becomes clear that colonial historiography has romanticized the achievements of Harshvardhan, while Dr. Majumdar has given an objective and balanced opinion. Full stop. At the same time, comma, we must agree that while Harsha's achievements may have been overestimated by earlier historians, comma, he was in fact one of the great Indian rulers. What was he not? The last great Hindu empire builder. But was he great in his own right? Yes, he was. क्या लिखा आपने अभी? He was in fact one of the great Indian rulers of antiquity, comma, just not the last great Hindu empire builder. Just not the last great Hindu empire builder. ठीक है, तो ये हो गया another debate with regards to whether or not Harsha should be considered to be India's last great Hindu empire builder. Next, we need to talk about Harsha's administration. इसको अब कल के क्लास में करते हैं, ठीक है? नो, हर्षाज एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के साथ हम इसके जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वीकनेसेस हैं वो भी देखेंगे, एंड व्हाई हिज एम्पायर वाजंट एबल टू सस्टेन फॉर वेरी लॉन्ग आफ्टर हिज डेथ, दैट आल्सो वी आर गोइंग टू सी. Following this, we are going to talk about the Chalukyas and Pallavas. चलिए then, thank you for your time. Let's meet tomorrow.